Alright, hey guys, welcome back to another quick take video. This one obviously is just going to be me talking about The Secret of the Mimic, finally giving my thoughts on the game now that it's been about 2 weeks-ish. This is actually a re-recording. I recorded a video yesterday, as of recording this one, where I talked about Secret of the Mimic, unscripted, all this kind of stuff, and that one turned out to be like over an hour long, so I thought I would dial it back a little bit and kind of just give my general thoughts on various things of the game. And if you want to see my full, like, in-depth, detailed, specific evidence kind of a thing, then you can become a channel member and actually watch that as a members only video, so you get the full experience there, or you can just kind of watch this one and get my general thoughts on the game. So anyway, with that being said, we'll get right on what happened there. We'll get right on into this. And basically, I want to go over like 3 or 4 general topics. I want to talk about the gameplay. I want to talk about the aesthetic, setting, design of the game. I want to talk about the feel of the game, and then a little bit of like the story. So not really anything like super like laid out, structured on any of this kind of stuff. It's all unscripted, but just kind of covering those main points. So we'll start with the gameplay, and I guess before we actually really get into things, first, right off the bat, I liked the game. I had fun with the game. It's a really good game. I just want to say that before people are like, oh, you think it's bad, or oh, you think it's whatever. I just want to say right off the bat, I had fun with it, and it's a really good game. But we'll get into things later. So gameplay wise, I think all around it works really well. Out of the 3 Security Breach-esque games, so Security Breach, Ruin, and this one, Secret of the Mimic, I would say that this one had the most structured, complete, well-designed gameplay. It felt very complete. It felt very tied together, and all around worked a lot more than Security Breach did, and a lot more than Ruin did. So all around, I think it works really well there. And despite the fact that I feel like it's a little uninspired with it being like just Ruin 2, because you have the Phas wrench, and you have to use the Phas wrench to open things, and you have all this kind of stuff to do. It feels a lot better than Ruin, and I think it works a lot better than Ruin as well. So even though it kind of is just a rehash of that, it actually works better in Secret of the Mimic, so it gets a thumbs up there. And all around, the gameplay was really fun. I didn't really have anything negative about the gameplay. The only thing in the game that I really didn't like, and that I would honestly say I hated from the game, has to be the just atrocious section with the floats, the little like float stand things, and the big crane they got to move around. I could not stand that section. You don't know what you're supposed to do. First off, it doesn't tell you what you're supposed to do, and it's loud as all get out in that warehouse. It's just so bad. I don't know what they were thinking with that. So that part of the gameplay, super terrible. That part just was garbage. Everything else was fine for the most part. The best section, I would have to say, is the Tiger Rock section. That was really well made. Really felt like Five Nights at Freddy's. And when the game comes out in VR on like Steam and stuff like that, I'm going to replay it, and I'm looking forward to that section specifically. So that is going to be really cool, and I really liked how they did that section. It turned out really nice. The rest of the gameplay, like I said, works fine, but it really kind of just felt generic, I want to say. It didn't feel unique, or it didn't feel like it stood out in any way, shape, or form. Like, oh, you have to go around and collect pieces to solve a puzzle, and the enemies walking around, and you have to avoid them. It kind of just felt like generic mascot horror to me. It didn't really stand out in any way. And that goes with the chase sections as well. I really enjoyed the chase sections for the most part. I would say the best one was the dolly one, and I'll get into why in a second. But out of the 3 chase sections, Jackie's section was, I would argue, the worst, because nothing happens. Like, actually nothing happens. And aside from Jackie being really cool, they don't really utilize her at all in the chase scene. I never felt scared once being chased by her, and I only died because I didn't close the door on her in time. So it just felt really short and unnecessarily structured, and that's kind of something with all the chase sections, is they just feel very structured, rigid, and not really any room for variation. Same goes for the DJ Music Man, regular, the Music Man guy. I'm not gonna call him Big Top, the Music Man guy. His section I felt was the most structured. It was the most unique chase scene, but it was the most structured, because he basically just guides you where to go. It's all scripted. There's no unique movement anywhere. It's all just scripted out for you. You follow the path. It really just didn't feel like it stood out. Like, it didn't stand out too much. The parts where it did was when he showed up on the roof and chasing you down the stairway. That was really cool. I like that. Everything else was kind of just bland. Now, Dolly's chase is arguably the most boring because it's super short and nothing happens. But it's my favorite because I made it through the chase section and the game crashed right after I made it through the chase section. So I had to do it again. But I liked that the game crashed. It was super funny that it did. And I guess kind of speaking along those lines of it crashing, bugs and stuff with the game, I experienced quite a few at the start. Not that this isn't like a complaint section. I love bugs in games. I think they're super fun. But I experienced a few that were like weird or made me have to reload a checkpoint. But I did experience one bug that soft locked my game. At the start of the game, when you walk into the like when you finally get past the showroom area and you make it into that first hallway, and then there's like that power room to your left or whatever, right? Well, when I first was playing through the game, that door just didn't spawn in. So I walked into the power room thinking that that was somewhere I had to go. And I just started messing with the power puzzle because it's right there. The door was open. I didn't think anything of it. But when I started working on the power puzzle, the door must have spawned back in and it locked me in the room. I didn't have the security clearance to get out. And so I had to restart the entire game because I got soft locked in that area. And I tried to reload a save, but it had already saved there. And so I had to create a whole new save file. It's not that it was bad. I thought it was kind of funny. It was kind of like, what the heck, already? Bugs in the game? And it made sense because the game had just come out. But I did just want to bring up some of those bugs and glitches that I had experienced. But outside of that, it really wasn't too bad of an experience. And later on in the game, I really didn't experience too much in terms of like game breaking stuff. So it seems like that early section might have been reworked, or like some of the last stuff reworked. And so it was still a little bit glitchy and buggy. But outside of that, really wasn't too bad. And that's really kind of it for the gameplay all around. I think it was fine, but it really just kind of felt generic for the most part, and it didn't really stand out to me in any unique ways except for a few different sections. So that's kind of it for the gameplay. If I had to give it a score out of 10, I'd probably give it like a 7 or an 8, only because of that Tiger Rock section. That really was super good. Outside of that, everything else was kind of just there. It worked really well and it played really well. It just didn't stand out. And so that's it for the gameplay. Moving on to the like aesthetic in the settings. So like I guess the visuals are kind of included in there too. I will say it felt like the best looking out of the three, the Security Breach, Ruin, and Secret of the Mimic. It looked the best. I would say it's probably my favorite aesthetic of any of those three games. It just felt a lot more enclosed, a lot darker, a lot scarier. It worked a lot better. And I'm trying to think of the right words to use, but it just worked a lot more. So I really like how the aesthetic looked. It was really nice. And the settings, I would say for the most part, were decent. I liked all the creepy costumes sitting around. There were some spots where I thought it was a little bit weird that there's just mascot suits sitting around, but for the most part, it worked really nice. The couple places I will say that were incredibly generic and boring, and I think weren't all that good, has to be the warehouse and the office area, which both happen to include Chica. I think that that's not a mistake. I think what happened, or what they were thinking, was they had these sections. They had a warehouse and they had an office section. Not like an actual gameplay office section, but you know what I mean? Like, there's that whole office area. And I think what they realized was that these sections were incredibly generic and kind of boring and very forgettable. Everywhere else in the game is relatively memorable. Those areas are really not, except for one key feature. The animatronic that shows up there, well, the suit at least, right? It's the mimic, but it's the suit. So I think they put Chica in there so that there was at least something memorable there, because otherwise the warehouse section, it's forgettable. The office area, super just generic. Like, there's nothing there that I felt like stood out except for Chica and then Mr. Cupcake and all those guys when they show up later on. So they kind of just felt placed in there for the sake of having something that makes that section stand out, because it was just fairly generic. And it's not that it was like it looked bad, because it looked good, it just didn't stand out. But outside of that, for the most part, all the settings were really nice. Now, some of the visuals, so like the actual visual effects in the game, there were some questionable choices. And honestly, there's one part of the game that I think visually looks incredibly terrible compared to even Security Breach. And that section would be the windows, where you get to look into another room, but the room's not actually there. Those look absolutely atrocious in Secret of the Mimic. And I don't know if it was just like the video quality that I had, or if it was just actually what they used. Because it was really bad. Like in Security Breach, you know, like when they have a window that shows something that's not actually in the game, it's like this perspective changing picture that you can like look around and it kind of moves around with you. So it looks like you're actually looking into a room, but there's nothing there. And obviously you know it's a picture, but it still does its job to be kind of perspective-y. I don't know what they did for Secret of the Mimic, but it literally just looks like a JPEG pasted onto a box. It doesn't look good at all. None of the windows look good. The only one that looks passable is the one in the office, and that's because it's blocked by monitors. Other than that, it really didn't look good. And I thought it was kind of funny. I was laughing at it because it looks really bad. But I just don't know what happened. Like, was that a part of the game that they rushed? Because they can't think that looks good. And I don't know if you guys think it looks good. I think it looks really bad. Like, it doesn't move with you. It just looks like a box with a bunch of JPEGs pasted onto it. It doesn't look very good. And I would say that's the biggest downgrade from every other game. I just don't know what happened. Because they used the same technology and help on it too to achieve, like, in the food court room when they have the Pizzaplex out there. I think it's the same idea. But I just don't know what happened. Because it's bad. But outside of that, everything else looked really nice. My favorite setting, I would have to say, would be outside on the roof, because it was snowing, and I love the idea of animatronics in the snow. I've always wanted that, and they added it in there. So it wasn't like a bunch of snow, but it worked. It was really cool, and I liked that look. Outside of that, everything else was fine. It was pretty much good. Not really much else to say about the visuals. So visual aesthetic wise, I would rank it, I would give it another like 6 or 7, and it's only that low because of those windows. They really stick out to you, and they really take away from what you're looking at. It's really bad. But everything else was really nice, and all around I liked that part of the game. Now, moving on to the actual kind of feel of the game. Maybe I should save that for last. Nah, we'll do it now. The feel of the game. How did the game feel? Did it feel like Five Nights at Freddy's? That's the ultimate question, and the ultimate answer to that is a no for the most part. I don't know what happened to my voice there, but the answer is that it does not feel like Five Nights at Freddy's to me. And that's less about what we're seeing. I thought what was going to happen before the game came out was that it would kind of feel like Five Nights at Freddy's, but that there wouldn't be anything Freddy's associated in the game, at least for the most part. And while Freddy himself sadly doesn't actually show up, which is probably, I think, the first FNAF game where Freddy himself does not show up in some way, shape, or form, which thus you can argue, is this actually a Five Nights at Freddy's game if Freddy doesn't show up? So that's kind of a big thing there. I was super disappointed with that. I was hoping we were going to see Freddy because we saw Foxy, we saw Chica. That was good. Bonnie, I love Bonnie, but he's probably the one you could pass on. But Freddy not showing up, and even in like the whole underground area where you get to see like the prototype animatronics, Freddy doesn't even have his head. So you don't even get to see a version of Freddy. And that's probably the biggest disappointment to me. Because even Ruin had Freddy in some way, shape, or form, which, I mean, technically he didn't have his head there either, but at the very least, he interacted with you in a chase sequence. So every game has had Freddy be some important element to the game in some way, shape, or form, because Molten Freddy obviously kind of fits into that category for Pizza Sim. But this one just doesn't have a Freddy, and I think that is the biggest disappointment. He's just not there. So that's really where aesthetic and character wise, I think it drops the ball. He should have shown up. It would have been really cool to have him show up, and like maybe he should have been the one in the warehouse, or he was the one in the office area, to give it a little bit more distinction rather than having Chica be everywhere. Have Freddy be one of those characters. So I don't know, I wish they would have used him more. It would have been more of a Five Nights at Freddy's game. He wasn't there. But outside of that, I think just everything else connected, like gameplay, everything else, just didn't quite hit the mark for me. And speaking of Mark, watching Markiplier's playthrough, I watched a good chunk of those videos. One video, I don't remember which one it was, but he was talking about pretty much the same thing. He said the game was really good. He's really enjoying the game, but it just doesn't feel like Five Nights at Freddy's. And his reasoning is one that I've been kind of using, and I basically was talking about since the game came out, is that it just didn't feel distinctive. When you play a Five Nights at Freddy's game, you expect distinctive gameplay, and every game has done something to stand out from regular games that you play. I mean, even games like Security Breach and Ruin add in little elements and little things that are like, okay, you don't normally see this in like a generic mascot horror game, right? And you don't really see that here, except for elements that are taken from previous FNAF games, which you can argue is a FNAF trope, but it just kind of feels weird here. Like, it just doesn't feel like I'm playing Five Nights at Freddy's. It feels like I'm playing a really cool mascot horror game, just not a Five Nights at Freddy's one. And I don't know, it just kind of takes away from the experience of the game when it doesn't feel like Five Nights at Freddy's. And I think the biggest thing, and again, Markiplier kind of talked about this, is just how FNAF has changed. And this is a whole topic for a different video, but we've moved away from a creepy horror game and moved into everything needs to be about a big story and lore. And aside from like the Tiger Rock area, this game is very like either straightforward story, or here's a bunch of puzzles that'll lead you to where you need to go, and here's a bunch of lore that you need to understand. It just doesn't feel like a Five Nights at Freddy's game. It just doesn't to me at all, and well, for the most part. And so that's probably the biggest reason why I'm not a huge fan of it. I really like it. It's definitely up there, and I'll give it a whole like scoring at the end, but I don't know. I guess to kind of close off this part, how does the game feel? What score would I give it? I'd give it like a 4 out of 10 on the does it feel like Five Nights at Freddy's, because it just doesn't to me. Jackie seemed like a really cool animatronic, hardly ever used. I liked Tiger Rock. Tiger Rock's hardly ever used. Outside of that, it just didn't feel like Five Nights at Freddy's to me. It just felt like a really cool game. Like, it was a fun experience. I liked it. It just didn't feel like Five Nights at Freddy's. And I guess not another part to that, but kind of going off of that with the story, I'm not a big fan of what they did for the story of the game as a whole. Now, not the story that they had for Edwin or anything like that. I liked that element, right? He makes the Mimic to kind of actually replace Fiona at first, and then eventually he works on a Mimic 2 program, which I'm assuming he created before. Well, no, I don't know. It's all very confusing, but he created the Mimic to basically be his new wife, weirdly enough. But obviously it's more so to be like, hey, can you keep an eye on my kid while I'm working on projects? And I like what they did there, because that was kind of the idea in the books, but I think they explained it and did it a lot better here in the games. As you guys may know, I am a strong opponent to Tales from the Pizza Plugs being canon. And just because this game came out does not mean that those books are canon, because those books suck. I refuse to believe that a trash yard, junkyard robot made out of scrap parts went to a prom, gave a guy a big smooch of motor oil, and then collapsed into a big pile of parts on the floor is canon to the FNAF games. I refuse to believe that. So, and that's an actual story from the books. Read the first one, you'll figure that out. So I like that they're kind of changing the elements from the books to make it a little bit better for the games. I like that. And I think all around it worked really well. One of my favorite parts from like the lore standpoint is the hidden message, not the hidden message, but like the message you get when you go into Edwin's actual office and it's all exploded. And you get the Mimic talking like Edwin, and then Edwin's also in there. And I really like how the Mimic sounds there, because he actually sounds like a sentient, sinister animatronic who has his own motives. He sounds cool. But the Mimic still doesn't feel like a compelling villain to me. He didn't in Ruin because he showed up for 2 seconds and was the most obvious twist in the history of twists. We saw it a mile away. So he wasn't very compelling there. He was a lot better in this game, I will say that, both design-wise and actual, like, villain-wise, he was a lot better here. But it still kind of just felt like he was there. Like, it didn't really feel like he was this creepy, overarching villain that's stalking us. He kind of just felt there. Like, oh, hey, it's the Mimic. He's back. Okay. It just didn't really feel like he stood out as a villain. And I still don't know why he's doing things. Like, he doesn't have a motive for whatever he's doing. I don't even know what he's doing. He's just there. And so I wish they would have done more with him to give him some sort of actual compelling reason to be a villain. Because he doesn't have one. He's just here. He mimics things for the sake of mimicking things, I guess. And that's really about it. He doesn't have anything else going on. I don't know. He's just sitting around, apparently. So I just wish they would have done more with actually trying to create a story out of him, rather than just having him sit around. But hey, you know, I like big creepy animatronics chasing you around, and he was definitely creepy, so I'll give him that. But outside of like those kind of things, the lore itself, very confusing. I'm not really going to get too much into the lore here. I'll probably make that a whole separate video. But for the most part, I think it can work. And it was fine. The actual story of the game, though, I have a bigger problem with. The lore and the hidden story of Edwin, that's all fine. The actual story of the game is just Ruin again. I don't know why they did that. So the whole surprise you shouldn't be surprised that there's spoilers. I've already spoiled like everything. The whole surprise of the game is that Dispatcher / hand unit before he becomes hand unit is actually a version of the Mimic who is mimicking the Dispatcher's voice to do their own bidding. Like, who could have seen that a mile away? When I was playing the game, I was live streaming it. Like, the second time we went back to the security office, we were like, this guy's the freaking Mimic. We knew it right away. And then it turns out, oh, it was a version of the Mimic. It's not like I've seen this exact story point used in the game previously. It just felt very uninspired that they went, what should we do for the next story of our game? Oh, I know. We'll have a character who's there to help us out and lead us to different places. But guess what? Their voice is actually going to be mimicked by a version of the Mimic. Whoa, it's not like we've done that before. It just felt really uninspired. And I get that the Mimic's whole thing, and obviously it's not like the Mimic, it was Fiona Mix's Mimic 01. So it's not like the actual Mimic animatronic doing this, but it's still a version of the Mimic. And I get that that's their whole shtick. Their whole thing is that they mimic stuff. It just felt very uninspired. And to be fair, it worked a lot better in this game than it did in Ruin. The second we saw that first poster in Ruin, we all knew, or of Ruin, we all knew that Gregory was going to be some sort of not actually Gregory. We all saw that a mile away. At least we should have. This one, I will say, it was a more interesting twist, but we kind of caught on pretty quick that it wasn't actually Dispatcher, and there really wasn't any obvious tells. His voice just sounded different, just a little bit different, and we were like, this is probably the Mimic. And it worked better here, and I will say everything that they took from Ruin works a lot better in this game. It just feels weird that they are using the same story beats that they used in Ruin again. And like I said before, I get that FNAF thing used to be that they just were the same game over and over again. But I mean, we haven't had a FNAF game since Pizza Sim, because I don't count Ultimate Custom Night because I don't like that game. But we haven't had like an actual FNAF game since Pizza Sim. Ever since then, every game has been different from the last one in some way, shape, or form. That's pretty big. And while this one is a pretty big change too, it just feels weird the things that they decided to carry over, and especially for the story, it feels weird that they just used the same story again. So that's probably my biggest complaint with the actual story of the game. Why did they do that again? Why is it just the Mimic mimicking things to lure us places again? I really hope that the next game that comes out for the FNAF franchise, like the actual next official one, if it includes the Mimic, does something unique with him rather than just, oh no, he's mimicking things again. Because I'm sick and tired of this guy just mimicking things, and he's only been in a game and a half, and I'm already sick and tired of this guy just mimicking stuff all the time. So I don't know. I just wish the story was a little bit more inspired on that front. But kind of moving away from the story, we'll give the story a rating. If I had to give the story itself of the game a rating, I give it like a 6 out of 10. It worked a lot better than Ruin, but it still wasn't great. If I had to give the lore / like the hidden, I'll give just Edwin's story that we hear throughout the game. If I had to give that a rating, I'd give that like an 8. It was really good, and it was really compelling, and I really liked it. So I'd give that one a higher rating. But kind of, moving into the end of the video here, it's already getting a little bit longer, but that's fine. Some last miscellaneous notes. Various different aspects of the game that didn't really fit anywhere else. Music, it was fine. I honestly don't remember any of the soundtracks in the game, but I'm sure they were fine. Most FNAF games have pretty good music anyway, so the music was presumably fine. I don't remember. But voice acting in the game, I will say, was probably some of the best we've had in any FNAF game, especially from the voice actor of Arnold. He put his all into that voice. I was impressed. That was he did a really good job there, especially in that ending. The ending where you give the Mimic the data driver thing. You put it back in the inventory chute and then you leave. That was the first ending I got. And then you get back in the van and you're driving home, and then actual dispatcher's like, hey, where were you? We were trying to contact you all night. And then they kind of go back and forth. The amount of emotion that the voice actor put in for Arnold was nuts. It was really good. He put his all into those voices. Like the whole, like the, what? No, I gave it to you, right? Like that part, he put his all in there. So I will say the voice acting was really well done. I think it's kind of funny because when I was streaming the game, we were talking about how Andy Field's voice for Dispatcher when you're actually in the location was a little off. Like we brought that up at first because he kept pausing every now and then, and we're like, what the heck's up with this? Why does he keep pausing? And then we were like, oh, that's probably because he's the Mimic. So obviously I'm not critiquing the way his voice sounded for that, because it makes sense that it would be a little bit off if it's supposed to be the Mimic or a version of. so it would be a little bit off. So I think that actually worked really well there, and everything else was really well. Like, I don't know why I stopped that sentence. Everything else was really well done. I like Jackie's voice. Dolly's voice was okay. I like Music Man's "Tickets, please." That was kind of fun. But everything else didn't. I don't know. Everything else was kind of there. The jump scare sound effects, I don't remember what they sounded like. Maybe they were cool. I couldn't tell you. I don't remember. But everything else, kind of more miscellaneous things, was fine, I guess. It was definitely a game that was better to live stream than to just play on my own. I don't think I would have been able to get through as much as I did having fun if I was playing it on my own. Live streaming it was definitely a lot better. And that's kind of really about it for the some more condensed down discussion of the game. One last note before we really round things off is that whole welcoming section of the game when you first walk in and it's like, here's the showroom, right? And they're all singing and dancing. I hate that. It was not good. It was a miserable experience. I did not like it. That was probably the most non-Five Nights at Freddy's thing I think I've ever seen in my life. It was really, that was not good. I did not like it. I get it's supposed to be the whole fun, ooh, welcome to the show. It was bad. Not that it was like scary or creepy or anything. It just wasn't good. I didn't like it. But that's kind of the last little, nitpick there. Everything else was fine. And, to kind of wrap things up here, because it's getting a little bit longer. To wrap things up, like I said, I really did like the game. I was fun. I had a fun time playing it. There was parts where I got a little bit like annoyed because it took too long, or like, oh, it's annoyed because how the game worked, or the mimic would spawn right in front of me for the 10th time, and it's like, come on. But all around, it was good. I liked it. I had a good experience with it. Having given it about 2 weeks, it has grown on me. If I had to give it a ranking, I'm gonna do a whole like re-tier list. I've done a tier list before, but I'm gonna do a new tier list of FNAF games sometime in the future. If I had to rank it on a tier list, I would put it at like a B, which is reasonably high, but that puts it around the same point of like, for me, probably something like Sister Location or FNAF 3, where it's like, it's not near the top, it's not near my favorite, and it's not near like the greats. It's just kind of there, right? It's a game that I can experience and have a lot of fun with. If I had to, I would play Secret of the Mimic twice in a row, so like 10 hours straight of Secret of the Mimic, rather than having to play through Sister Location Night 4 and 5 in a row once. So there's a plus for Secret of the Mimic. I cannot stand Sister Location Night 4 and Night 5, despite the fact that I am a master at Night 4 and Sister Location. I still would never want to play that again. So there's at least a plus there. But yeah, I'd give it about a B. It was average. It's a heck of a lot better than Ruin. I can't stand Ruin. I used to say Pizza Sim was the worst FNAF game. I've since kind of changed my mind. Well, I think the Office section in Pizza Sim is the worst. But Ruin is my least favorite, and I would say worst FNAF game to exist. But that's also coming from somebody who loves base game Security Breach, so, take that with what you will. But yeah, it was fine. It was enjoyable. I had a good time, and that's, my whole thoughts on the game. Again, if you want to see the full, unedited, complete breakdown of the game, then, you can become a member and, get that, watch the video. It'll be up around the same time as this one. But speaking of channel membership stuff, because since we're kind of on that, you get some other perks for being a member. Some of them you get some fun emoji stuff, some 8-bit emojis made by yours truly, and another perk that you get, that one that I kind of follow through on as much as I can, is a shout out in every video. Speaking of, here is the shout out to my current channel members. Thank you guys so much for being my members. It really does just mean a lot to me that you guys are. And, here's your shout out for your video. I almost said daily shout out. It's not daily shout out because I don't do that anymore. So here's your shout out. And again, just thank you so much. And yeah, with that, we'll wrap things up. So thank you for watching it, and thank you for making it this far in the video if you have. For your questions of the day, because there's always two. First question, what did you think of the game? Did you like it? Did you not like it? And second question, if you had to rank it between somewhere on the FNAF game list, if you had to rank it somewhere, where would you rank Secret of the Mimic? So just answer those down below if you made it this far in the video. And at that, I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.